Good morning, everybody. Welcome to RSA 2026. It's hard to believe that we're all here again. It feels like it was literally yesterday that it was Thursday night and we were leaving RSA 2025. And I think it is very fair to say that the world has changed a whole heck of a lot since we were here last year. There's this thing that I keep hearing about. It comes up usually in the first 3 to 5 seconds of every meeting called AI. And it seems to be a hot topic around the conference this year. I think we're probably going to talk about it, but not in the first 1 to 3 seconds. But I want to start off by framing how we're thinking about the conversation today. So for those of you that came here for an Illumio sales pitch, enjoy breakfast and leave because you're not going to get it. This is not an Illumio panel. This is not an Illumio sales pitch. You're not going to get it from me. And if you're not getting it from me, you're definitely not getting it from any of my panelists. We are going to have a conversation, and really they're going to have a conversation about the reality of what is going on, what AI is doing and is going to do to cybersecurity. And I'm going to posit something at the very beginning that some of you that I know have heard me talking about over the last handful of months. And this week, I'm talking about it a whole lot more vocally. Cybersecurity is foundationally, fundamentally, and systemically broken. I'm starting off with that so that I can build on it, but I want to be very clear. I'm not hedging my words on this. I'll prove it to you, not with my opinion, with fact. By the way, you all know this, so when I say it, it's not going to come as a surprise. For the last decade, every single year, year over year, here's what's happened. We spend more money on it. We have more people doing it. Still not enough, by the way, but more every year. VCs fund more startups year over year, and more funding goes into companies every single year. We produce more tools, we buy more tools, and we have more people using those tools. Guess what else has happened every year for the last 10 years? The number of breaches, the size of the breaches, the frequency of the breaches, the dwell time of the breaches, and the best one of all, the exclamation point at the end of the sentence, the economic losses from the breaches have gone up faster. So there's this old expression, I'm sure I'm not the only one in the room who's heard it. What's the definition of insanity? Do the same thing over and over again and expect a different outcome. Every year, we do more, and every year, the results get worse. And I want you to remember something. That's all before AI. So when we say it's foundationally broken, it doesn't mean that the world has ended or it's going to end tomorrow. But what it does mean is two things. Number one, you can't fix a problem if you don't get up and say, I have a problem. We have a problem. Actually, we have a very, very quickly growing problem. And now you have to think about if we already have that problem without AI and we throw AI on top of this world, is there a possibility that we're going to have a catastrophic problem one day? And given the rate of acceleration of models and what we see coming out of Anthropic every 24 seconds, it feels like that day could be sooner, not further out. So at some point, we have to just have the conversation and say, what are we going to do about this? And so in that spirit, and again, not at all to talk about Illumio, let me introduce 4 people on my left who have all literally lived it. I always say this, one of the fascinating things about working for a cybersecurity company is that it's actually funny that most of us that work at a cyber company have never actually been smack in the middle of a breach. We build all this stuff, but we actually, fortunately at Illumio, we have not been in the middle of a breach, but most of us never actually do what they do every day, which is live through this. So I'm going to introduce my 4 panelists. We're going to get going. So first, sitting immediately to my left is Sherrod DeGrippo, who is the GM of Global Threat Intelligence at Microsoft. This is the only time I want to make sure I read off my iPad so I get it right. Sherrod definitely has lived it. Spent more than 2 decades on the front lines of threat intelligence, leading global teams focused on malware, adversary behavior, there's a few of those out there, real-world attacks. Currently in your role at Microsoft, Sherrod works directly with customers to understand threats and evolve where the defenses break down. And I think if I have this right, you're on the CISO side of the organization, so not the product side, but actually defending the company and customers from that perspective.
That's correct, and really thinking about the threat intelligence that we have and putting it where it can do the most good.
Awesome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Mr. Boda, all the way in, longest commute, all the way in from London. So David and I have gotten to know each other incredibly well. David is the Chief Security and Resilience Officer at Nationwide Building Society in the UK. Nationwide's a customer of ours, but much more importantly, David's been a very, very close friend and partner as we've tried to grow the company and figure out how to make this situation a little better. David led cybersecurity across government, critical national infrastructure, and financial services, and has helped shape national and international security standards, bringing a practical view of what resilience really requires. There was a point in time before financial services where you worked in some places. Are you allowed to even name any of them?
I looked after security at the lottery, both Illinois State, UK, some other lotteries around UK and Ireland. But also, worked in government.
And some other places as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so sticking with the theme of government, you can talk about where you were. So Teresa Payton, former White House Chief Information Officer under President George W. Bush. Teresa was the first female White House CIO, is the co-founder of not one but two cybersecurity firms, the author of several influential cybersecurity books. You spent your career managing cyber risk, where failure is obviously not a theory. The White House is a pretty important place, regardless of who's sitting in it. And from national infrastructure to obviously major breach response, it literally all was on your table. What's it like being in the White House every day, keeping the lights on?
It's an honor, and it is really cool.
Really cool,
it's
right?
Really cool.
And there's stuff that you also have done that I'm assuming you can't talk about? Tell us about. Like favorite secret system in the White House that none of us know exists?
No.
Perfect. Tim Brown, former CISO, former by
A month.
I was going to say, we're measuring still in minutes or hours? A month. Former CISO at SolarWinds. Many of us obviously came to know Tim because of what SolarWinds went through, and Tim has literally lived it probably with as big a spotlight as you could possibly have on any CISO in a situation that was as critical to all of us keeping the lights on as anybody could have gone through. Tim left SolarWinds recently and has actually joined a great group of friends at Team 8. So many of you know 8200, and Team 8 is a venture firm that Nadav, who ran 8200, was instrumental in putting together. So you're now with a whole group of friends that we have over there. And we're going to talk about what you went through and obviously how it sort of ties to the world that I'm describing, I think we're living in. So thank you to all of you for being here. And let's sort of get going. So first of all, let me ask you, do you agree with the way that I framed where we are, each of you? And please, I love when people tell me I'm dead wrong and show me why, but do you agree? Do you think I'm over-rotated, under-rotated on it? Is it worse than I'm describing? But let's start there.
So I think that it is, some of the things are true, right? If you look at the stats, they're true. I think some of our stats are wrong. I think how we measure a breach is often data that doesn't matter, right? So we don't differentiate between my address and my phone number to my medical records. So I think if we had better data, you'd see that those numbers were a little bit down. I think that we've really done a good job on defending against what I call drive-by attacks. What I'm worried about AI is that dot of done a good job just moved way up because we're not prepared to defend against tomorrow. So I think we have made progress in the last 10 years and we have made things better. But I agree with you that the motivations have been greater, the money has been greater, the adversaries have not been stopped on the political side or the penalty side. So there's still a whole economic and political gain that's been going on that's even more, is better. So not to disagree completely, just think that we haven't failed completely.
I do believe that cybersecurity is fundamentally broken, and it's by nobody's fault in this room. I think incredibly hardworking, well-intended people in this profession, but there's a couple of things that I think have gotten us a little bit off track with where we need to be. One, I think compliance frameworks, again, are great things that happen to our business and sometimes the worst thing that happened to our business because it gives us sort of this mentality around the checklist has to be met. And I would venture to say that many firms that have some type of an incident probably had good-looking checklists. right? Where some things are yellow, some things are red, most things are green. We're maturing, and maturity oftentimes is measured in terms of activity instead of reduction of threat surface. So I think there's that. And then the other piece is we don't hardly ever talk about the real end user. So the real end user is the person who has to interact with the technology that you've built for them. So a lot of times, maybe Cisco meets with the bank, but Cisco never hears from, I'm not picking on Cisco, or Microsoft, or anybody else, IBM, but they don't meet with the bank's customers to say, how does this feel to you? Is this seamless? Is this elegant? They don't meet with the bank's employees to say, how does this multi-factor authentication work for you? Yeah. And so we really have, shame on us if we don't take actually this unique moment with AI and the investment that's happening to actually reimagine how we do all of this. So I'm not saying throw everything out, but really literally start with the human user story and the true end user and say, how would I build this from scratch versus, well, how do I continue to sort of patch the things that are wrong? And so I believe that it's fundamentally broken through no fault of anybody else's, I think, well-intended people. But this is our moment, actually, and shame on us if we don't take this moment to actually reimagine how we think about everything.
So I think the way I think about it is I've used the analogy of many of us in this room, maybe as leaders, will have sat down with maybe a junior member of the team who's just become a manager for the first time, and we'll coach them about how to stop firefighting and to take a step back and be a little bit more strategic. And I kind of feel that's where we are in cybersecurity. We're still very much firefighting. Yep. Your point about the pace of change is well made, right? And so if we don't challenge ourselves and challenge the way we think about things and fix some of those things, we'll always just be firefighting. We'll always have that tension. We'll always be a bit demotivated, and we'll never get ahead of what's coming next. So I think back to some of those conversations I've had with people I've been coaching, and I kind of feel like, well, that's me. That's all of us. That's what we need to do.
I think, for a long time we've talked about, humans being the last frontier in security and human-centric, and the reality is we're going to have to start thinking agent-centric now, I think. And that future is going to look really different because everyone talks about a human in the loop, and we need human babysitters to babysit our robot agents and all these things. So the definition, frankly, I know it sounds very sci-fi, but the definition of what is a human in security is going to become difficult to really nail down. And if we want a human in the loop, we have to decide, is the human going to lead or is the technology going to lead? And the frank truth of the matter is humans are accident prone, agents are accident prone.
That's right.
Don't expect the same level of efficacy from both, but neither is going to be 100%.
So I want to tug on something that was inside of Tim's answer, but it's sort of threaded through all this. So for 40 years, let's put a number on it, a handful of decades, I think it's fair to say that everybody who participates in cyber on any side of the cyber table would agree that we have described outcomes in cyber as binary. You are either safe or you are popped, screwed. It's one or the other. We've described it as binary. So I want to sort of posit something. If you went to your doctor, I'll make it easy enough and personal enough that you can imagine it because we've all done it and we're going to do it again and again and again. If you went to your doctor and the doctor said you had a cold, would you worry that's the end of your life? Probably not. You'd go home, have some tea, maybe get a little extra sleep, and you'd expect a day or two later you'd be better. If you go to the doctor and they say that you have a disease, you probably don't react the same way. We grade everything in life. There are small problems, there are big problems. There are small problems, there are catastrophic problems. There are medium-sized problems. But in cyber, for some reason, and you all have been doing it for a long time, we never seem to figure out that grading problems is a healthy thing, that it's not perfect or catastrophic. And yet, not only have we not had that conversation, it doesn't seem to be in the room, but as a result of it not being in the room, we haven't adopted our strategies around, we're going to have problems, let's make sure that we focus on keeping them small as much as possible. So why not? Like, take it from any angle you want, but even when you're talking to your boards or your why is the conversation not about, let me tell you how I'm going to stop everything, which I can't, to let me tell you how I'm going to stop as much as I can, but I'm going to make sure that when I miss, it's small, not big.
That's why I love that your title has the word resilience in it. I think that that's honoring the real truth of what we're doing. We're not always in a ability to secure. We are building our ability to be resilient in the face of the threats that come. So I really love that you have that in your title.
And I want you to give your answer, but I also want to know who gave you the word resilience in your title. I don't know. Was that you, or did the org decide?
No, the org decided before, and it's because of the way that the UK financial sector regulators think about operational resilience and what they've done. It's interesting, right? As a CISO, I spend over 50% of my time on response and recovery, not because we get hit every day, but because that's really hard to do right. So we speak a lot about prevention and detection, actually, but that's like the minority of where I focus. It's much more than a Word document and a PDF file. It's like to get a whole organization to have the muscle memory to respond and recover effectively under pressure, to get customer services back in a timely manner. That's really difficult to do, and I hope I never find out if I've been successful, but that's really difficult to do. So that's why resilience is in my title, and it's bringing those things together to make it effective. But to your point about, we talk about these, I don't think we help ourselves, right? For every CISO that goes to the board and succumbs to but it'd be really great if you could just rag status this for me. We're doing ourselves a disservice, right? And we're also doing ourselves a disservice because if we all sat here in some sort of financial conference with a bunch of CFOs, all the CFOs would be like, EBITDA, what's your, all of this, and all those things I don't understand. And that's great, but they understand it and they speak a common language. As a community, we don't get together and try and work out what is the common language that we can speak with each other, how we can come up with common metrics, and then if we've got it, then all our boards would get it as well, right? Because it'd be a common way of identifying what's actually going on in the organization.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a very a direct situational question.
Okay.
So Secret Service is around the White House. I'm there, wife, mother of 3. Secret Service sees what they believe to be a gunman, only they're not focused on the president. I'm actually in the line of sights. Should Secret Service protect me from the gunman?
Secret Service is charged with protecting the president.
Correct. So they should
And
let
there's
me
the
go.
direct answer.
Yeah, so, right. But by nature of the fact that I'm one of the assets working at the White House, there are a lot of protocols in place that make me as an asset safer, but I am not the primary focus of protection because you cannot protect everything. Right? And so I've started to use such a vivid example, but it's the same way with our systems and data. And so you have to have these realistic conversations with your executive team and your board. You have to actually force rank the value of your data. And only you know what that is. So it's either the regulatory burden and the risk, it's customer reputation, it's your secret sauce, if you're Coca-Cola, it's your secret recipe. Whatever it is, only you know what that is. But you actually have to take the time to talk about all of your digital assets, and hopefully you know what they all are. That's not easy either. That's like Monty Python's In Search of the Holy Grail, knowing where all our digital assets are, right? And so if you can take that moment with your executive team and with your board to say, this is how we think about all of our critical infrastructure, our digital assets, our data, and then here's the ranking of what's the most important. By nature of all the work that you're doing to protect the crown jewels of the company, other things are going to be naturally safer, but you can't focus on everything. And so I think that's where things like, I call it no trust architecture, because for executives, zero trust feels like a product that you buy and a destination that you get to hang out in, whereas no trust architecture is it's like a lifestyle choice, right? And so I think that's where something like no trust architecture can really help, because you can show how you've segmented the crown jewels from kind of the rest of the data.
Tim, I want you to answer, but before you answer, if you're willing to, I'd like you to frame it a certain way. You lived it in the brightest spotlight that at that time had probably been sitting over a CISO and over a breach because of the downstream implications and the size and scale of the ripple. If you can frame it around how much conversation had you had, and how much conversation had the team, the executive team had before that day about resilience and recovery and the tabletop of what if this happened?
Yeah, so when we look at, SolarWinds incident, Orion was the one thing that was impacted, right? One of our key products that had, we'll say 50,000 or so customers around the globe. Was that talked about to the board, and was that talked about the potential of something like that to our executive team? Yes, it was. Was it brought up as an extinction level event? Yes, it was. I had 2 assets that could reach that level. One was my MSP business, the other one was Orion. What was also understood was that I was not prepared for a nation-state attack. That was known, and part of our report said, I am not ready for a nation-state attack. I am ready for general attacks, and I am prepared for general attacks, and I have good resilience on general attacks. So I had a good program. The cost to go to a nation-state attack scenario would have been great. And was that, looking back, maybe it would have been apparent and would have been worthwhile to go there. But from a business perspective, we were spending appropriately for the business at that point in time to get to the resilience that we thought was going to be necessary. What I anticipated was a 0 day that nobody knew.
Right.
That was I did not anticipate somebody breaking into my back end and changing the code. I did not think about that scenario. But we absolutely did have the scenarios of, it would have been inexcusable for me to be hit by a lesser enemy. Somewhat excusable for me to be hit by a nation state.
It's not a surprise to hear that it was discussed as day-to-day threat, we're fine. The incremental cost of getting to what would be nation state was not justifiable. And of course, that's the math equation that really stinks for all of us, which is they get to be right once and we have to be right 100% of the time. And that's a really, really bad set of math if you're a defender. It's just the reality of it. That's kind of always been the math in cyber. So Sherrod said something really interesting, and I'm going to actually share, I'll say an anecdote, I won't give attribution, but I sat in a customer meeting yesterday with an existing Illumio customer and a very large enterprise with a very sophisticated team. And we started to have the conversation around agents and their ability to take action. And we started to go down the sort of, for lack of a better description, the rat hole, not in a bad way, but we sort of started to go down that hole of, well, what are we really willing to let the agents do? How far are we willing to let the agents go? And one of the technical folks on the team said, look, like you guys have agents that are now sitting on top of our Insights product. I'm just using it as an anecdote. The agents are going to find things. Are you going to build agents that are then going to be able to take action and start quarantining things automatically? And I was sitting with Mario, who runs product and engineering at Illumio, and we said we kind of already have, like the agent capacity to automate a response is already there. But I said to the customer, are you ready to allow agents to do the investigative work and the analysis, agents to decide whether or not something has met a threshold, and agents to then make that decision and action a quarantine? Or let me say it differently, are you prepared to cut off something in real time and not have a human in the loop? And the CISO was sitting next to the gentleman that I was having the conversation with and started laughing and said, yeah, the answer on that last part is no. That was the answer. So we have to separate the technical capability, which is we could automate the whole thing all the way through to quarantine. So I'm going to ask each of you, if you were sitting in your day job still and in your day jobs today, would you literally be comfortable allowing agents and AI to run the entire spectrum all the way to cutting off a customer-facing or an operational system without a human in the loop?
Well, I don't love that idea.
It sounds so great, though, doesn't it?
No. So I think for me, the reality is I deal with software developers so much,
Yep.
and I certainly haze and bully them that they're the problem. And now what we've done is we have created not as risk evaluative, but 10, 100 times faster developers with these agents that are creating so much code. They are pumping out so much software. It is unimaginable. And I think ultimately it goes back to kind of what I was talking about with humans. We must, it is imperative, we must ensure that the technology is right, because there is no way that humans will be able to keep up with it. We have to use the technology that all of us in this room build, configure, and deploy to protect the humans that are going to make the mistakes, that are going to click on the link. I hate that analogy. I hate that phrase.
But it's so good and it's worked for so long.
It's so good and it's worked for so long. But
My mom still does it literally all the time.
well, you know
I
what?
got this email and there's a link in it. Should I click on it?
No, but she never should have gotten that email to begin with.
Listen, that's...
If the technology works, she wouldn't have. So that's the kind of thing that I think we have to really evaluate. It is imperative that we understand the amount of code that is coming out will never be able to be conceived by a human mind. We're beyond the threshold. The inflection point has happened. So how are we going to manage that? For me, it's not end-to-end agent automated.
Okay.
So look, would I let an agent go through the whole cycle today? No, right? But is it my job to make sure that in the future that could be a possibility? For sure, right? Because, you know, if and like any technology, it proliferate, organized crime will start using it, nation states start
Matures.
using it.
Yep.
I talked to my board about, you know, I can't put a human in the way of that in the future. Like, it's just unethical if nothing else, right? And so I'm going to have to, you know, defend the firm at machine speeds. That doesn't mean agents necessarily. It could mean automation. It could mean other things. But I've got to get the organization ready to be in that place where that could be a possibility. And that's just not a technical problem. That's culture, ethics, you know, muscle memory, processes, you know, thinking. So if I don't allow the organization to experiment and learn and shape and understand now how actually having an agent take the decision to cut the network link or and do some innovation, then, you know, I'm basically just waiting to react to the news article when another organization's the first unlucky one that gets hit, right? And oh, maybe we should have thought about that 4 years ago.
So only because you're literally sitting in the seat in real time, just a yes or a no, like, do you expect that we're going to get there? Do you think that we're going to get to a place where an agent or AI or something is going to make the decision about pushing the big red button and chopping off a piece of the company in order to hopefully preserve the rest?
I think it will be possible, and I think some organizations will do it, and
Okay.
some people will be nervous, and that's okay.
So when are you implementing it?
It's already there. Still wants it now.
Teresa, what do you think?
So I need to see a few things from AI agents that are running in the SOC that I don't regularly see today. So I need to see more of this, and it needs to be a feature that's automatically built in. And so it's things like operating in Socratic method. It's truly immutable logs with an audit trail. Because I've worked enough insider cases to know that if human engineers are really good at deleting their tracks when they do things that are wrong, then AI agents are going to do the same thing. So I need to know, are you, as a company that is offering this type of technology, are you creating immutable backup audit logs of what these agents are doing?
Yeah.
There is a piece of logic and humanity and reason that is still going to be required in a security operations center. And so we need to all be thinking about our responsibility around upskilling and retraining the SOC, so as these agents are running at machine speed, trying to detect things at machine speed, that humans know how to kind of orchestrate, inspect what we expect. I'm always going to come from, what, as it relates to technology, from a always verify, never trust. And so there's got to be a way to audit that, whether it's independent agents inspecting and auditing the independent agents. I don't know what that looks like in the future, but we're missing some core building blocks today that give me pause and give me concern for 100% automation. But I do believe we're on the path to getting there. And as these things are put into place as an automatic feature out of the box, then I think we can do that. But we do have a responsibility right now to understand, what does the SOC of the future look like? What does the CISO team of the future look like? And how are we preparing our workforce and training our workforce for that inevitability?
So one of the things you talked about was assets and classifications. So I think there's a number of assets we could turn automation on today that the impact would be low. I think there's other assets that we would never turn it on until we have appropriate architecture, checks, balances, some deterministic checks versus the non-deterministic checks of AI. And can you get comfortable with the impact analysis and the risk reduction processes that you have in place? I think we will get there. But I think there's a number of assets that we could do today and be comfortable with. So that's the way that I think is that if it's a low risk, low impact asset and we see something there, great, let's do some actions on it. But that you study per level of risk and per level of asset value. So, and we'll get there. I do believe we'll get there. It's like saying before, we adjust compute automatically. We adjust compute automatically
Today.
All the time.
all the time.
So the consensus view is we're not all going to go away and be irrelevant anytime immediately soon, right? Eric, we're in good shape, right? We all have to go to work still. Can I pivot to the threat world for a second? And I'm going to obviously start with you, Sherrod, but you live probably closer to this. The biggest, for so long, everybody knew that the biggest problem that cyber had, besides things that don't work or holes that we shouldn't have, the biggest problem was most organizations went in and said, yeah, that's never going to happen to me, right? That was always the line, right? Like, I'm not a big bank, I'm not a regulated institution, I'm not the White House, why would anybody care about me? And ransomware sort of finally woke everybody up and realized that actually it's indiscriminate, it flies around, it hits randomly, it could be a school district, it could be a hospital, it could be a big bank. Like, right now, if we break up the threat world into what I'll call criminal and nation state. First of all, which one should we be more scared of? And second of all, you don't need to give details, just which one should we be more scared of? And which one is actually a bigger threat day to day?
So I think nation-sponsored versus financially motivated threat actors is something that's constantly talked about. We have people that are on one side or the other in the analyst world. The number one thing I'll say is ignore parts of the threat landscape at your peril, because ultimately in the end, the actions that are taken are generally threat actions and malicious anyway. So by the time you have attribution to, oh, this was a nation-sponsored actor, or oh, this was financially motivated, it kind of doesn't matter because they're in. That said, generally what we see, if you have strong resilience against financially motivated, you're usually doing still pretty well when it comes to the APT side of the house. So doing the security hygiene. But if I could divert just a little bit into the future, there is a third part of the landscape, and that is socially motivated or hacktivism. Okay. So I think, Sam Altman said, 6 months ago or so, that he believes that there will be the first single human unicorn startup. So a startup that is valued at $1 billion that only has one human. Yeah. I believe we will see the advent very soon of the unicorn threat actor, which is an apex level threat actor that has incredible capability, incredible reach, incredible automation persistence with one human. Right. And so now we're looking at disgruntled employees. We're looking at lone, angry people who are trying to get back at an organization, at an individual. It will bring that enablement to single people. Right. And I think that that's something that we have to kind of think about, not necessarily preparing specifically for that, but making sure that we've got the bases covered for the potential that anyone, from an insider to somebody at a different nation, any of these things can then become so empowered that they have apex level threat actor capability. I'm going to go home and pull the covers over my head and never come out. Thank you. And you need to go back to work right now. Eric protects us, so you need to go back to work right now.
Well, what Sherrod said should worry us, right? Because when we talk about cybersecurity being broken, at least we've got a playbook and a textbook for maybe what good looks like, even if it's from a compliance perspective, which is depressing. But you kind of have to have compliance as an entry criteria to managing risk, right? But from an insider threat perspective, like certainly maybe it's different in the US, but across like the public sector and the private sector, I've never seen anyone do insider threat really, really well. Like really well. It's difficult, right? It's like you have to get access management right and culture. You have to understand psychology. You have to, the vetting. You've got to have the right logging to really distinguish between what's legitimate or not. And you've got to bring all of those disciplines together with HR and legal. And it's really difficult to do that well. And then you've got that tension between like privacy, certainly in Europe, like between privacy and security, and how do you make that trade-off? So if what Sherrod said is true, then actually maybe insider risk rather than cybersecurity is where we need to be focusing our time to fix, in the future. That's certainly something that I worry about. When my board say, what keeps you awake at night, I'm thinking EDR evasion is kind of up there, but maybe not appropriate for a board conversation. So that insider tends to come up, right? If there's a lot of money being moved about, how really, how well am I set up to be able to distinguish legitimate versus suspicious?
So your former building, they must have thought about every version of this. Which one's scarier? Which one's, the geopolitical landscape obviously is not helping anything out right now. It hasn't been for the last handful of years. So where did you spend most of your time? I sort of feel like we could guess, but.
I have to admit, so hearing from my smart fellow panelists here, like my monkey brain is like hopping all over the place each time one of you talk, and so I've just got so many things I want to bring up to this group. But yes, so obviously, we had to worry about activists with a cause. We had to worry about hacktivists. I don't like a petition. I don't like what's going on. I don't like the foreign head of state who's visiting or whatever it was.
Yep.
So we had to worry about that. We had to worry about geopolitical things. And so we would have certain days that our vendors would tell us, you're the most attacked website and most attacked infrastructure in the world right now. Thank you for that designation. Really appreciate that. And so nation states, but obviously cyber criminals were a concern of ours as well. Having gone to the White House from financial services, I did feel like I had a better handle on kind of the white collar crime, the terrorist financing and the money laundering and the KYC side of things. But the nation state capabilities, a lot of which are still not really publicly talked about, that was a little disconcerting to be more read into that when I got there. But I would say, the nation state capabilities, it's interesting because they may not hit you as often as the cyber criminal syndicates, but when they do, just like an insider threat, it's devastating. Whereas the cyber criminal syndicates, obviously equally devastating depending on what it is they take. But if you look at what happened to poor Stryker, and first of all, Cork, Ireland, like why? And why Stryker? And they obviously have nothing to do, as far as you can tell on the surface, with the war. But Iran got lucky, or Iran sympathizers got lucky. So that you kind of look at that and you say, I'm sure they were compliant with many things on a checklist.
But
before wiper malware destroyed, going in through Intune, I think is what they're saying, early investigation days, and getting access that way. So I would just also say to everybody, there's a lot of technology coming that I think is going to empower and kind of take your game to another level. So for example, I would love to see us through AI orchestration actually be able to spin up honeypots at scale, where if you are targeted by a nation state or cyber criminal syndicate, you could actually rope them in, stick them there, call the FBI and say, come and get them, right? And so I would love to see us be able to use AI in a very creative way and an offensive way to learn more about the adversary, their tactics, techniques, and protocols than we're able to do today. Certainly we spun up honeypots, certainly many organizations do, but it's hard and it's expensive and it's complicated, so not everybody does it. And I see this amazing opportunity before us to be able to orchestrate more of that.
Tim, same question, but I can obviously put a frame around it, which is you said that you guys felt like you were great day-to-day, drive-by wasn't going to be a problem any more than it would be for any other org. So the reframe here is, did you ever wonder, like both before and certainly after, like how did we end up on a nation state's radar? Like,
yeah. So it actually is hindsight, right? Hindsight helps. So our business model was download, try, and buy on-premise software. Give me an email, I'll give you the software. So the cost to do investigation, the cost to do analysis was very, very low. If we're in SAP, you have to get consultants, you have to install, you have to do all of these things. So that cost is very high. Then our footprint across the globe, very high. 18,000 had used the versions that were affected. So they could see that. Then the other part is we now believe that the target was established first, that the 4 government agencies were the target. You could see that Orion was on the open internet. You defined an attack that required you to connect to a command and control server and go through the cycle. So lots of pre-thought for how to do things. So some of that anticipation, I could have said, well, yeah, and where we sit in the network, right? And that was the other big one of how we're configuring where we sit. Since we're monitoring the network, we most likely, our bot sits in a place that would have access to other sensitive systems. So given all of those factors in hindsight, should we have thought about more of saying that, yeah, nation state could be a target? So who am I worried about more actually now is, we haven't changed the equation on organized crime. We haven't changed the financial equation. You still can make plenty of money, not go to jail. Still the same idea for a nation state cyber attack. Yeah, you get a little bit of you shouldn't have done that. But there has not been any real penalties. So we haven't changed the other side of it, but we have just changed the side which says, can I perform a very detailed, patient, long-lasting attack? An agent doesn't get tired.
Yeah.
An agent can read emails for a year and determine things. An agent can slowly go after things. So we now have the power of a nation state in the hands of organized crime. So if we don't change the equation from a penalty perspective, it's going to get really bad.
Is the perception, just one quick follow-up, is the perception, Sherrod, the perception I think out there is that nation state up here in sophistication, everybody else sort of somewhere on the spectrum, right? Some very good, some not as good. Is it reasonable to go to the extreme of if a nation state decides to target you? Because we used to think that a nation state would only go after another nation state. Now we obviously know that's not true, and it's happened more and more. Is it reasonable to assume that if a nation state, and we all know what the list would be on the other side, if they decide to target you, it's very likely that they are going to get in, maybe close to 100%. They're that good, they're that sophisticated, they're that well-resourced.
They are that good, they are that well-resourced, they are that sophisticated. I do think, though, that there really are great ways to use threat intelligence, my own little bias there,
yeah.
to use threat intelligence to decide where to put your resources, understand the threat actor, know what they want, know what they're doing, and defend against them. I really do think that we have that capability, but it means understanding who the threat actor is, what TTPs they're using, how they're going about it. The thing that I find the hardest for me about nation-sponsored is they don't want to be caught, so they're very stealthy, and they will get access and then maintain and get access again and again and again. Yeah. Whereas most of your financially motivated actors, they're big and loud, and they've got your ransom, and they want to negotiate. So I think that the stealth angle for nation-sponsored is the thing that is going to require us to really audit systems, really understand too fast to travel, movement, things like that. I mean, even just something like North Korean IT workers, which is not a sophisticated threat particularly. A lot of our basic technology can catch that stuff.
Yeah. They're playing the long game where smash and grab is truly like it was in bank robbery, smash and grab.
And I completely agree, and I'm frustrated by what Tim said, which is the repercussions are near nothing.
Yeah, they're basically zero. All right, so I knew this was going to happen. We've got 5 or 6 minutes left, and I have 1,400 questions that we didn't get to. And they're not going to let me keep going. Like at work, I can just sit up on the stage at all hands and just keep going, but here they're going to, everybody's going to leave. So flip it around maybe to something very tactical and practical. If there was one thing that we're doing in cyber, probably have been doing it for a long time, maybe for too long, over-rotated, overspending, over-relying on, and we should probably consider stopping it I don't care if it's a tool, a control, a human process. Like, if there's one thing where it's like, seriously, it's 2026, the whole world is turning itself upside down, everything's moving faster, how are we not stopping, fill in the blank?
I'll say one of the things that I think is sort of overused and silly is people talk a lot about threat models, but they don't actually have anything written down. They don't actually have anything on paper, and they haven't actually done any research. They'll just say like, well, my threat model is XYZ. I'm like, do you have any data to support that? Do you have any actual information telling you that that's your threat model? And a lot of times they don't.
So is your answer that we should stop talking about it and doing nothing and start actually doing it?
You have to actually create a model with data to call it a threat model.
So we actually should start doing that.
We should start doing that, and we should stop doing this back of the napkin thing.
Okay, fair enough. Mr. Boda.
Signature-based data loss prevention using regexes. Winds me up no end. It's good for the compliance sake. So.
Teresa?
I love what you both said, so I'm going to say ditto, ditto.
And I'm not letting you out with ditto, ditto.
And yeah, so your cybersecurity awareness training, they're snoozing, you're losing. So just like reimagine, re-energize, do something totally different, do simulations, stop sending them the phishing emails where they click on the link and then they get sort of this negative, I'm gonna tell your manager and you have to go through retraining. Do a reward system. So this one healthcare organization, they reduced people clicking on links and things like that by over 200%. And the way they're doing it is they have contests. And for the teams that get 100%, people responded on time to the security training, they passed the quiz, et cetera, they all get sent like Uber Eats, they get sent pizza parties, they get recognized by the CEO. So they've made it kind of competitive and fun, and they're incenting the behavior that they want versus calling people out. Now, I do have one client, and this worked for them too. They have a hall of shame. But it's a very, very macho climate, and so they love like totally busting on each other. And so when somebody clicks, everybody knows their poster is up. When you log in, you see a wanted poster, and that works for them too. But find a way
love it.
to just try to reimagine and re-energize. Do these things too, but also reimagine and re-energize your security training.
I've had 4 people text me while we're up here saying, do you want me to wire the money right now?
So I think, something you need to stop doing is trusting so much, right? We trust people are doing the right job. We trust they know what they're doing. We trust they configure things appropriately. We say, yeah, well, if I was going to do that, this is the way that I would do it. So we have inherent trust in the system. And so I think what we need, one of the things that I would change is to, test and verify more. Test and verify automatically. Understand that, all your services can be configured appropriately and securely. And very often they're configured inappropriately and securely. So don't assume, don't trust, put systems in place to, truly, we have much more power coming up, right? We have much more capabilities coming up from automation perspective. So use them to verify. It's usually not malicious. It's simply people make mistakes on different things. And, one of the things I put in post-incident, I put a full-time red team and a full-time security auditor. So my own auditor. So for example, everything is in GitHub for us. So I audit GitHub every 6 months and I red team it every 6 months. And I audit and I red team because the configuration of GitHub, did it change? Is it still secure? Did somebody add 10 admins? Did they do something? Just because I wouldn't do that doesn't mean that somebody else has, and we wouldn't necessarily see it because, it's not a vulnerability, it's not going to get caught in a scan. So think about the trust and verify.
All right, we got about a minute left, so I'm going to ask one last question. I'll call it lightning, but you can certainly answer it in more than a word. We're all going to be back here a year from now at RSA 2027. I don't know if it's going to be in February or April, but let's call it a year from now. Are we going to be sitting here in an industry that has acknowledged that if you can disrupt the whole world as much as AI has in the last 12 months, Are we going to be sitting here saying that we are failing to disrupt this industry enough to keep up? Or are we going to get our act together in the next 12 months and actually turn ourselves upside down, because it's happening everywhere else, and it doesn't seem like we're going to keep up if we don't?
I'm an optimist, and
Okay.
I believe in the spirit of information security, which is built from hacker culture, and those people care deeply in their DNA. Those of us that have been doing this for a long time, we've only been able to do it because it is built into our bones and our soul to protect people, keep people safe,
Yep.
make sure that people can transact. I believe it is a human right, and many of us also believe it is a human right, and we will do what it takes to make it work.
So we will.
We will.
Some people in the industry will have the time and space and the sponsorship to really think through these problems. And
Yep.
I think it's on all of us to find those people and help amplify them and support them and, help them succeed.
It's already happening, although I think it will be a challenge for some of the established services and product companies, because there's going to be some cannibalization of what you already do.
Yep.
So the question is, no offense to Kodak, but will you become you've got to find your niche and figure out what you're moving to, and do it. But it is already happening.
I think the Kodak example is fair. I do. It wasn't like they didn't see it coming. It wasn't like the data wasn't there to support it. You have to make a really tough decision.
You have to make a really hard
Really
decision.
tough decision.
To say, in order to be a strategic going concern and to do the best possible job we can for our clients, we're going to have to make some tough decisions about businesses that we're going to have to cannibalize.
Break things and break ourselves.
Yeah.
Tim?
So I think I'm going the other side. I think we're going to need an event or some major event to convince the financial world that this is not just a cost-saving event, that this is an area that we will need to invest in, and the investment changes, because this is being seen as a huge benefit from a financial perspective, not a cost that we can need to insert. So I think we'll get there, but I think we're going to go through a blip, and I think we'll go through a couple blips, and we'll eventually get there. So I am an optimist for a little bit of time, but I think we're going to have to feel some pain before we get there.
So I will end by just adding that I'm in agreement. I think that we're incredible, and we have a long track record, both in the real world and in the cyber world, of doing a great job of reacting to crisis and then changing as necessary. We tend to be pretty bad at being proactive for the sake of avoiding the crisis. So I think we'll get there too. I am an optimist, but I do think it's going to be a bumpier road getting there than just waking up and saying, look at what everything is happening in the world, we need to change with it. But we'll get there. Although the apex threat, that's still going to get me to go home. I know we're out of time. I can't thank you guys enough for doing this and for coming here to do it. I can't thank all of you enough. I know RSA is usually 3 booked things at the exact same time for 4 straight days. So taking an hour out and coming here, we really do appreciate it. Have a great rest of the show, and let's all go back to work trying to save the world.